Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Aprilia Maharani.
Hello guys, my name is Amalia.
I am Yischa Paruntung.
And this video is made to fulfill our final project, English Prose. And the topic is about analyzing short story. And the short story that we have been selected is When I Was a Witch. So before we moving on to the explanation, I am as a first speaker will be explain about the synopsis of the short story. When I was a witch, on a night without fresh air, he was in a state of hot temper and heat. Without the cold air, he went straight to the roof to cool himself. There he reminisced, and the night before was even worse. Cats and dogs interrupting his rest time, carrying newspaper early than his time, being run over by motorcycles, missing trains, very bad nights. He is very angry and calls himself on the roof. The people who hurt him will feel worse than him. The atmosphere of food was quiet as time went on. He fell asleep. The next day, the morning felt better than the night. But because of trivial things, his anger is getting bigger. He cried and wanted to curse them. When the wagon came, he gathered the reins of horse that followed what it said. All days he felt something strange and unnatural about himself, like a power that was within him. But no one believed that I did that strange thing. From then, he started making a list of charges in his book. That power is real, but as it turned out, the power that was in his body was not a good power, but a bad power. It made everything work very badly. It's beyond the reason. Okay, so the next is the setting. How is the setting created? Consider geography, weather, time of day, social conditions, or etc. So the answer is there are many geographical settings, including houses, train stations, and more, such as on the short story, and the whole house teeming with the little advices activity, which always seems to move the steam radiator when it is unwanted. And the weather in the short story is described as hot and cold at night. It had been hot, really hot all day, and was sultry thunderous in the evening. The time in this story is night, morning, afternoon, and the timeline is the October 30th. The social described is a bad day. So, what role does setting play in the story? The role of setting in the time in this story is night, morning, afternoon, and the timeline is the October 30th. The social described is a bad day. So, what role does setting play in the story? The role of setting in the story is an intrinsic element of the short story. The setting in the short story is important to know because it describes the setting of the short story. The reader must know where the story takes a place. When was the story written? The story was written on November 1st, 1909. This short story was first published in German's magazine The Forerunner, Volume 1. And does it take place in the present, the past, or the future? I think the story takes place in the past, precisely in the 90s. And the last is, how does the time period affect the language, atmosphere, or social circumstance of the short story? Period of time affects language, atmosphere, and social conditions that occurred in the past. And the next is characters and the characterization. Who is the protagonist? The role of the protagonist in the short story is I. In a story using I or the first person. Do you have your antagonist? If yes, who is it? And what antagonistic qualities do they have? The antagonist's role in the story is her sister. It is because the character of his brother is stuck and doesn't want to take responsibility. For the example, I can't help it, said my sister who keeps house. Are the characters dynamic or changing or static or unchanging? Explain and mention it. The characters in the short story are dynamic because at the beginning of the story, the character I has a very bad day and becomes a grumpy person. But after he realized that there was a bad power in him, he wanted a good power instead. How does the author describe the character's appearance, personality, mindset, and actions? The author describes the appearance, personality, mindset, action of characters that are complicated for the reader to know, I guess. What are your thoughts, feelings, or opinion about the characters? Um, the characters in the story change and have characters that are difficult to prediction. What is the relationship between all the characters? Um, the relationship between all the characters is meant. Okay, the next is plot. So next, the plot of the story. Okay. On an old train, a mother is traveling with her two children, a 4-year-old boy and a baby girl. The boy keeps looking out of the train window, pointing out what he can see. He tells his mother that he saw a witch outside, who threatened to eat him up, but he chased her away. Just after this, a man smoking a cigar enters the train carriage and engages the boy in conversation. Asking him what he's looking at out the window, the boy tells the man that he's looking for witches. The man asks the boy some other question and learns from his mother that his name is Johnny. He then asks Johnny about his baby sister and offers to tell Johnny about his little sister. The man then relates the story of how he loved his sister so much then that he put his hand around her neck one day and killed her. Then he dismembered her body and cut her head off and put it into a cage with a bear, which add the hit. Johnny is grieved by this story and wants to know more, but the mother, overhearing what the man is telling her son, tells the man to stay away from her son and leave the carriage. Laughing, the man leaves and Johnny asks his mother if the man's story was true. She tells him that he was only teasing, but Johnny concludes that the man was probably a witch. So I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Narrator and point of view. The narrator in the story is Charlotte Perkins Gilman. The writer speaks through the main character. The story is written in I, first person, point of view. Next, conflict. The main conflict in the story is when the main character wants to take revenge against people who makes his die bad when he finds out the power he has. Next, theme. The theme of the story is personal experience. And the last, style. Almost all the language used by the author in the story is figurative. I think that's all from me.
Author's life. Charlotte Perkins Gilman was born in Hartford, Connecticut on 3rd July 1860. Her best known work was the Yellow Wallpaper in 1892, and one of her major works, Women and Economics, was published in 1898. Gilman was a writer and social activist during the 1800 and early 1900. Historical background: Charlotte attended 7 different schools until she was 15. His passion for reading is inspirable from Frederick influence. He most liked the subject of natural philosophy, which later became known as physics. His father also supported him to become a trading card artist, teacher, and painter. Cultural background: with regard to African Americans, Charlotte writes in the Journal of American Sociology. Charlotte also believes that the descendants of British Americans gave up their country to immigrants. However, in an effort to gain a voice for all women, she spoke out against the literacy requirement for the right to vote at the American Women's Suffrage Association Convention, which took place in 1903 in New Orleans. Social background: Charlotte described herself as a humanist and believes that the environment suppressed women through the patriarchal belief held by society. Charlotte argues that male aggressiveness and the role of motherhood for women are artificial, so it doesn't take long to survive in post-history. The contribution of women to civilization throughout history has been stopped by androcentric culture. She believed that household chores are not only held by women, but also must be shared by men. Charlotte argues that home should be defined as something social. That's all about author's life, historical background, cultural background, and social background. Thank you.